Welcome to the Zachrilege cast, Casper Rigsby. How you doing tonight?
I am wonderful.
The man is wonderful. It's a little past my bedtime, so we'll see. I won't fall asleep in mid-question. Now, sometimes I do out-of-context quotes, but with Casper Rigsby, it's pretty much all in-context quotes, so we'll do one. If you quote Fox News to me, you can go suck a fat dick.
Yeah, that is a direct quote, and I mean that in the most literal sense. It's not vague in the least. I don't care even if it's factual information that came off of don't quote it from Fox News. Use a valid source. That's just not a valid source of information, even when the information is factual. It's just not valid because you should double check every single thing you hear. Like literally, if they tell you the sun is a real thing and it warms the planet Earth, you need to check that with multiple sources because it could be absolute bullshit.
I'm not sure. I mean, you live in Tennessee, so there's probably some kind of law that's going to be passed about that.
It's quite possible. I don't know. It's a weird place around here.
Now, of course, people probably know you, but for those who don't, I figured we'd get started with kind of your own personal background, like your family background.
My family is a pretty much a traditional Southern family. Very devout Christians, maybe a little more so than others. My grandfather's a long-term preacher, like most of his life, over 50 years. Preached for the Church of Christ. For those of you acquainted with the denomination, I'm sorry that you've experienced that. For those of you not, um, visit one of their churches sometimes. They'll let you come in the first time, just as you are, and then they'll pick you apart if you keep coming. Um, so yeah, that's where I started out at, and um, I really tried my hardest to be involved in it and invested in it, and that didn't really pan out. The more I studied, the more I looked, and the deeper I dug, the more I found inconsistencies and just too many questions, um, and not enough answers. Even the answers just had more questions to them. As I started studying comparative mythology and comparative religions um, and philosophy, it all really fell apart. Um, I feel like there is a point where you can learn so much that you don't believe anymore, that you can't possibly continue to believe. And that's why I really, really, truly believe in education. I believe in literature. I believe in getting back to the idea of like really seeking out knowledge. Um, and I kind of believe in the idea that if there's anything that we should really shame people for, it's ignorance. In today's society, everybody has a little. If you're not homeless, and many homeless people do have phones, but if you're not homeless, you have no excuse for not having knowledge and information and being informed. There's no valid excuse. So
Well, did you have any issues with your family? Did you make it? Because it sounds like your personality, you're the kind of person who just lets people know what you think. Were you open about your doubts?
um yeah, a little too much with my grandfather, I suppose, but he always pushed back with the you have to have faith stuff. That's of course what it all falls back on. When you don't have all the answers, you got to have faith. um I just you can only pray so much, and you can only continue to look so much. It's not like I just got angry and gave up one day. It was the constant search um that came to a point where you realize the answer isn't really there. So I definitely take the position that I'm not 100% sure there's no God. I know the Bible, the God of the Bible, or any other God that any man has ever offered for us to believe in is absolute crap. It's just pure fantasy. Um, I don't believe there is one, but I could be wrong. There's that little minuscule bit. It's very small, but
Now, in the grand Casper timeline, when you moved to Georgia, were you still religious?
um, I was trying my best to be religious. I was looking for any sort of answer to why I just could not figure things out and could not get along. Um, and yeah, there was a lot of time just praying and searching and looking um, in a lot of the wrong places. Um, and not with a lot of assistance at home or support there. So I mean, it's really just a common thing, unfortunately, for a lot of people in this country. A lot more so than people know about, honestly.
And when you're kind of, I guess, a bit aimless, then other, I guess, groups can seem very appealing. And I wondered if you could talk about your, I guess, joining the Aryan Nation.
Um, it was an easy thing to walk into, especially in the area I was um, in the surroundings. Environment plays a decent amount, and then you know, mixed with a home life that I didn't really um, want to be a part of at all. Uh, Anything that seems like family can really draw you in. Um, I do equate a lot of it to like quite a lot to like being in a gang. Um, Although there's a lot different atmosphere there, I suppose. Um, and I suppose that it's a different sort of angst that's projected there. The underlying reality of it is the truly dark bottom line behind it. And a lot of people involved in it don't really see that. That's not really what's marketed. It's the same way when you look back at the rise of the Nazi Reich and Hitler to power. It wasn't like day one, hey, let's go murder all the Jews and black people and gay folks. And everybody was like, well, that sounds fine. Well, let's do that. I mean, it was a very gradual thing. Like, hey, I think maybe the Jews fucked up our economy. Like, let's talk about that for a minute. And people said, well, I mean, the economy is fucked up. Let's hear what you have to say. Um, it's a slow creeping sort of thing that I don't think Hitler had any doubts in his mind from the start that he was gonna get to that point. Uh, I'm pretty sure that plan was on the table from day one, but it's just not a thing you market. So it's a thing that's easily missed by even the lower ranking people. I'm sure your general soldiers in the early Nazi army did not see that coming right off the bat. So.
What did you do you think as someone who was in and then got out, like, is there anything specific about white nationalism that makes it enticing to people, or is it just kind of a community thing, a togetherness?
Um, it's being able to point your finger at an other that is the source of your strife and your struggle. Um, being able to identify with others, a source of your struggle that's external rather than internal, can really have a unifying effect, regardless of whether that source or that symbol of your struggle is real or not. So generally, it's all the others, all the people asking for equality, which are then demonized by these groups and said to be asking for special treatment and um, control over everyone and to force themselves upon everyone else. And are you going to take responsibility for being a poor white person yourself? Um, if somebody is saying, "Hey, it's look at all these other people," it's their fault. It's all the black folks in the ghetto. It's all their fault. They're all the ones asking for the handouts. It's all the Mexicans out here. They're the ones taking all your jobs. You can't get work because of them. Build that wall. Keep them out.
There was a bit of a dead spot there. Hopefully, we'll see if
Oh,
that
sorry.
there and your response was some kind of internet outage, but I think I caught it. I was about to make, of course, because I like to make light of everything. Like, well, good thing no presidential candidate ran on that, and that's not the current situation. But with your situation, what? I mean, getting out of religion didn't seem like you were really committed to the cause, so maybe that wasn't a tough situation. But how did you get out there and literally had to leave a state to do it?
I went to prison. Um, and the odd
I
thing
wouldn't
about
recommend that for other people, by the way.
yeah, no, it's not a recommended activity. I don't recommend that anyone ever goes there. But yeah, it's an odd thing. Prison is one of the wonderful things about prison is if you want, everyone forgets about you. Some most of the time, even if you don't want, everyone forgets about you. You just disappear. You get thrown in a hole. I disappeared into the swamps outside of, well, like right at the border of Georgia for 3 years, and everybody forgot I existed. And then I just left the state and I'm gone. People can forget you exist real quick.
I guess so. So did you immediately go to Nashville area, I guess where you are now?
Uh, this is where my family's at. So this was the people willing to possibly give me another shot. Um, some of them have done that. Um, some of them I'm still working with. Some of them I don't care to continue to try and work with. So
Well, I feel like an entire probably episode could cover this, but since you have your own experience with being in prison, I mean, is that a place where people go for any kind of reformation, or is it just somewhere you just go?
um, okay, so prison has some opportunities. Some prisons have some opportunities. If you want those specifically. Generally, however, prison is criminal boot camp. It's where criminals go to learn to be about better criminals, especially the ones for younger people who have shorter amounts of time. Generally, they go through very, very dangerous and violent environments where they come out much more dangerous, much more violent, much better criminals because, people in prison, you don't have a lot of time to do much else. So you sit around and tell stories all day long, and people just listen to you and they become better criminals. I learned to do so many criminal activities in prison. I don't participate in any of them, but should I choose to, re-enter a criminal life, like I would be a much more adept criminal. and that's just the reality of it. It's a very violent and dangerous place for the most part. I was lucky enough to go to a medium security prison, which is a step below max, simply because I have a serious heart condition. And because of that, this facility had one of the better medical facilities because you still don't like to transport people that have life sentences, multiple life sentences, 40 plus years and stuff. But that's uh, the type of convicts I spent my time with, and I say that very specifically. These were convicts; these were not inmates. I spent my time with honest to God convicts, people who were never going to see the free world again. That's where they lived. But that's the type of place you actually want to be, because those people, that's their home now. They just don't want any trouble. So it tends to be a slightly better environment, I guess, for the environment you have to be in, but still quite dangerous and quite violent when it turns into that.
Well, how did you change in the amount of time you were there? Because it seems like you can say as a joke, oh, safety school, well, I can go back to crime, but obviously you didn't do that, and you kind of went against the kind of white nationalist bent you had before you went in. So was it just a lot of time to think, or what happened in that 3 years?
Um, Sobriety was one key factor. Um, I stopped doing drugs. I got sober, uh, completely against my will. I did not want to go through that treatment whatsoever, and I suppose if you're just listening to this, that treatment is in quotation marks. That is treatment, which is you just don't have drugs anymore. Enjoy that. Um, so I got sober, and I just had a lot of time to do nothing but read and think and exercise and be bitter and angry and hateful and resentful. And I spent a good 2 years feeling that way. Um, and it was absolutely worthless. And I just I overheard somebody say something that sounded like the stupidest thing I'd ever heard. And I just sat back and repeated it to myself, just laughing to myself, listening to this guy. Um, he was telling this other dude, he said, man, if you want more of what you've been getting, you keep doing what you've been doing. If you want something different, try something different. And I was just like, I was younger. I was a hell of a lot younger. I mean, this was over 18 years ago, and it sounded stupid. That's a bumper sticker slogan. That's fucking useless. Um, but it's weird. Sometimes bumper sticker slogans have a little fucking decentness to them, and this is one. It's just I did not want more of the same crap that I kept dealing with, so I had to do something different. Something had to change. If the problem wasn't external, it had to be internal. That means I had to change. Um, I went searching for an external answer repeatedly. I kept looking for God. That's the external answer. If there's an external problem, it's what we focus on so much. There's always an external problem. If it's not another race, there's a Satan, there's a demon, there's some asshole out here that's causing your problems. There's always something causing your problems. When the reality is a vast majority of it is internal. You cause a lot of your own problems. Mostly because the reality is you can only control one person on this planet, and that is you. You control you. You don't control anybody else. You cannot control what they do. Not one single little bit. I have two children, a 6-year old and a 12-year old. And realistically, I cannot control what they do. I can put as many barriers as I can humanly put in front of them, but if they honestly want to do something, they will manage it. I have only so much even say so in it. Um, and that just changes your outlook. Like, how much bullshit have I dealt with that I caused because I was controlling me? So, how much of it was me? And I decided I was going to educate myself. I was going to inform myself. I was going to try to experience things and learn and grow. Um, After getting out of prison, I only came back to Tennessee shortly. I spent about 6 months with my mom, and then I immediately just hitchhiked across the country. I went all over the place, just met different people, lived homeless all over the place, just experienced different things. It was very humbling. So,
Did you ever like a favorite spot you visited while you were touring the country?
I had different favorite spots for different reasons. I liked Houston a lot. It was it was just a very hectic and eclectic place. San Diego was very fun. The beach is very nice there.
I bet. Now, if you go to Amazon.com, you should, and search Casper Rigsby, you find a lot of content. So, when did you start writing, and when did it become something that you were like, hey, I'm going to start publishing?
I started writing books back in 2014. I published the first one in 2015. But I started writing music and poetry long before that. I didn't understand that was something that could be really worth a career. I mean, there's only so many, Stephen King's or whoever. There's only so many known writers, and it wasn't something that I thought of as a potential focus for a career. And then Armin Navabi of Atheist Republic, I submitted a blog to them, and they said, "Hey, we like this. This is nice. This is cool. How often can you publish something with us? How often can you shoot us a blog?" And I pumped them out. I think I pumped out about 72 over the course of 2.5 years or so. And then they said, "Hey, would you like to publish a book?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And from there, I ended up turning out, I think, 7 in about a year and a half time span, and I'm up to number 9 now. Yeah, I believe number 9.
We'll get there in a second. Now, the book that I downloaded and read, well, I read most of it, so don't give away the ending. Bible in a nutshell. I wanted to do one quote from there. Suck it, Lucifer. And that was Jesus.
Yeah. This book was honestly just my attempt at coming to terms with how absolutely ludicrous the Bible really was. I've read the actual Bible several times and several different versions. There are many for those who are unaware of that. And so for me, this is how this story actually plays out in my head when I think about it. It's just a carnival circus of insanity. A wizard from another dimension just creates all this for his own amusement and pleasure, and he just, human beings are less than ants to him. He'll trample us or run us over. He sends us to murder other people because potato. Why not? The Amalekites were assholes. You need to kill all of them, including their babies and their animals. What part of that do you not understand? Do it. So, but this is our kind and loving God. This is the wonderful, wonderful God of the Bible. I try to equate that book with the drunk history version of the Bible. Um, and the original version is actually is it's a fairly fun short read. Wouldn't take any time at all. There's also a much longer director's cut version, which dives a lot deeper into some of the stories, and I give some of my own personal commentary on just how ridiculous some of this stuff is.
What made you decide to kind of revisit this? Because I think this originally came out in 2015, and the kind of director's cut version was out last month.
Um, the the director's cut came about because a lot of people said they wanted more of this story. Even okay, so even my critics on this book were generally upset that I left out crucial components and ideas and stories out of here. And honestly, there isn't. There's nothing left out of the original that you need in order to understand what the Bible is about. Especially from a Christian perspective. If you're Jewish and you want to understand the Bible, is that you probably should understand a little more, I guess. But yeah, if you're Christian, that's really all you need. It's going to be the most horrifically um, worst version for you to read, and it's going to hurt you, but it'll be the most honest version. Um, it's played up like a shortened Harry Potter. Um,
Well, what is kind of the elevator pitch for your latest? Hey, I'm pretty sure this is broken.
uh, okay, so the pitch for this one is most of us only have about an hour to a 90 minutes attention span, really, at this point, even when we're trying really hard. So I wanted to tackle some of the worst of our political issues in a book that's gonna hit at about 90 minutes or so, um, and hopefully in such a way that it's just hard to refute what you're being told. I cite a lot of sources in here. For such a short book, there's a decent amount of sources. Um, it it just really underscores how broken the system is we're working with, and it's sort of a um, I guess what I've called it is a sort of a check engine light for those in the nation who are, you know, willing to listen a little bit and think about some of these problems. How can we come together and fix them? This book doesn't provide answers to those questions. Just really highlights what's most broken and what we really need to fix. And not even all of the topics. I will probably revisit the topics that I missed in this one and another one to accompany this because there's just so much broken that it's hard to cover in one book that can, you know, maintain the attention span of the general average person right now. And we just I actually do somewhat talk about that and the fact that we want to be entertained and not informed. So hopefully I've offered something entertaining in the realm of politics that can really think about what topics we should be discussing a little bit more and how we should really think about them.
Well, we might as well get into politics since you brought up in your book. So you put yourself in a political scale that scares a lot of Americans because we are easily scared. What is is it anarcho-socialist? Is that the correct way to pronounce it?
Yes. So an anarcho-socialist is I believe that no one should be forced into living in a socialist society, such as with communism, where, the people are just forced into that choice, whether they want it or not. But I do believe that if you don't want to partake in that society, you should not reap the benefits of it. Um, you should not be, subjected to the good if you're not going to be willing to deal with what comes with it. Um, I believe we should all choose. to work together, to make things better, out of selfishness, not out of some altruism. We are not naturally altruistic beings. We're just not. That is not our natural inclination. Our natural inclination is selfishness, but understanding the reality of the situation, we can do it out of selfishness. It is selfish for you to help your neighbor, because if you do that, then your neighbor is not fucking hungry. He's not starving. He's not going without things. Therefore, he doesn't steal and rob from you or your other neighbors, and your neighborhood isn't overrun with crime. It is a selfish act. It is not selfless. You're doing it to help yourself. If we could learn to do that, to help others in order to help ourselves, to make everything better for everyone, then it would work out a hell of a lot better than it has so far. But it has to be a choice that we all make. Um, that's the anarcho part. I don't think that we should honestly be forced into it. I think people should just realize that given enough time, machines are going to do the vast majority of the jobs that are available to be done. There are more people than can have jobs. If we don't figure out something other than our current capitalist money is king society, we're either going to end up killing ourselves or killing each other to have these resources. And it's just going to be a horror show. So I think we have to choose a better route as quick as possible. But whatever happens, happens. I'm not here to force anybody to do anything they don't want to do. I think we'd be better off if we'd all agree to do the right thing.
Yeah, it does seem like the current political situation is one side saying that the other side wants you to force you to do certain things, and it's a lot of fear. There's a lot of stick, where's the carrot kind of going on. So do you consider yourself more of like a humanist than atheist?
Um, uh, Atheism describes my theological position. My philosophical position, I am humanistically inclined, although I am not mm, pacifistically humanistically inclined, if that makes sense. I don't have the full breadth of pacifism built within me. Um, I have had a long history of violent tendencies, um, and in the wrong situation, I would not hesitate to defend myself or the people that I care about, in as strong a violent manner as possible. So my humanism only extends so far, and is that you don't violate the lives and sanctity and, you know, well-being of the people I care about or myself. At that point, I kind of feel like you forfeit.
Yeah, I mean, you'd probably be okay with the punching of Richard Spencer, which I think I'm kind of okay with it too.
Yeah, I definitely was. I was definitely. I wasn't going to say he deserved to be punched, but I'm not going to be angry at the guy who did it. I mean, it's what you get when you parade across the street and you're saying Nazi shit. That's what happens. It's just like if you say the N word in the middle of Harlem, like expect to get punched in the face if you're lucky. Just expect that. That's what happens.
Yeah, there's a lot of being nice. Well, there's the other side, but it only seems to fit for the people who, if they were in power, would kill the fuck out of us. I mean, let's be honest. If that were the truth,
Well, I like to say there's no such thing as a martyr. Okay, people don't die for what they believe in. People get murdered over what other people are willing to kill for. So I guess the real question we have to ask is, what are you willing to kill over? And hopefully that question is nothing, so that people aren't murdering each other. But apparently that question is answered with a lot of people seem like they would kill over some pretty simple things. And that should be terrifying for all of us. A lot of people seem like they would murder someone over pronouns and getting to choose another person's identity for them. Like, they would murder over that, and that is absolutely morbidly insane. And it should be terrifying to all of us that we've slipped so far into that realm, that's the reality right now. That's not some comic book fictional fantasy. That is the reality we're living in.
Well, you seem to be a fierce defender of women and trans people and pretty much minorities. Like, how do you get to this mindset, and how do you just live it on a day-to-day basis?
I have the luxury to be here. I have the privilege to be here. I have the privilege to have people like you and others who have been so incredibly nice to have me on your shows, um, to be noticed by y'all when so many other people don't get noticed for so many other reasons. My voice isn't for me. You're never going to see me running as a politician or trying to be the CEO of something or the president of some organization or any crap like that. That is not what I'm here for. If anything, I have the privilege to shine light on things that don't get as much light without someone who gets the attention I get. Um, it's as simple as that. These are the important issues, and it's upsetting that a lot more people aren't listening to those voices. If there's any way I can amplify them, that's exactly what I'm going to do. My story is pointless. It's useless, except to the few people who would come out of it in the same way that I have. And I don't, I don't have a lot of hope for a lot of those people. Um, so my voice is far better used, um, pointing at problems that people aren't wanting to talk about and pay attention to, because we keep being told that we shouldn't talk about these things, or um, that no, these problems were solved a long time ago, and they're not. They still exist. Misogyny, sexism, sexually predatory behavior, racism, phobias of all types, from homophobia to transphobia. All of these things still exist. There's still a problem, and we're not dealing with them. We keep putting band-aids on them, and band-aids don't fix open wounds. We have to do better, and we can. So everyone that has the privilege to um, endure the spotlight and to help shine a spotlight on other things should, I think. I mean, I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. Do what you want with your life. It's your life. Have fun. Um, but if you feel so inclined, and use your privilege for something worthwhile.
Well, you were very intertwined with Atheist Republic, and you kind of decided to move on. Do you often get kind of frustrated by the direction that some like atheist organizations are taking at this moment, kind of cozying up a bit with kind of alt-right anti-feminist voices?
Um, I find it alarming and a bit troubling, because I think there is a point where you can take an idea or an ideal too far. And I think free speech is one of those areas, where you don't have to give people your platform and give them a wider range of audience, simply to have a debate or disagree with them. Um, it isn't your responsibility to platform others, and it doesn't look like a sign of civility to do that. These are not good faith actors. These are bad faith actors, and they show it time and time and time again, repeatedly. They troll people in real life. Um, and giving a wider audience to these people is just, it's asking for trouble, you know. It's it's going to end up with someone like, oh, I don't know, Ben Shapiro having to walk back statements related to, oh, I don't know, the racist as hell Stephen King or Steve King. It's just, you know, that's the people you're dealing with. And the fact that it took Steve King saying, I don't know what's wrong with calling yourself a white nationalist. When did that become a fucking uh, a thing that people should be offended by? And then Ben Shapiro's like, well, maybe he's a little racist. And like, no, man, it's been racist for a long time. Like there was a lot of shit before now. Like, no, man. And it's so it's just, that's a huge sign that these are not good faith actors, and you don't give them your time and attention. Um, and so, you know, when it comes to Atheist Republic, I felt like I've always felt like your integrity is one of the few things that you can take with you, no matter where you go. You can always take your integrity. If you say you stand by something, stand by it. Um, I felt like I was not in tune and aligned with the direction the Atheist Republic was taking from a standpoint of the leadership and their support for certain activities and actions outside my own personal scope and purview within the organization. Therefore, I chose to distance myself from the organization. That's the most polite way I can put that, and and polite out of the sense of, I appreciate the platform that I was given by Atheist Republic, because it is a very large platform, and it allowed me a lot of privilege to spread my ideas and the ideas of others, and to amplify some voices, and to amplify some ideas that I thought needed to be predicated throughout, you know, a wider audience. So I do appreciate that, and I'm very humbled by that. Um, but there comes a point in time where I feel like it was more important for me to um, amplify myself, and put my own personal integrity and thoughts above that of the relationship with the organization.
Well, will you be coming to Nanocon?
Yes, I'm actually doing my best to get my presentation put together and sent in to Patrick this evening, and then help them work on the website a little bit. I do really support Nanocon, and I think it's a great convention. Um, like any large, crowded convention, there are a lot of people there, and a lot of, you know, just a lot of bodies crammed into a lot of space. Um, so uh, just be on your P's and Q's, and everybody be happy and friendly, and polite, and within your own personal space, and let's see, respectful of others' personal space.
And clean up after yourself. You're at a high school, which I think is where they're hosting it this year.
Yes.
You do a pretty good job. Well, you had, I mean, you had growing up a tough situation with your parents. Now that you're a parent, how much does that come to you when you're thinking about it? I mean, obviously, you say you can't control your kids, and nobody can. But does it make you think differently about just parenting in general?
Well, definitely. I approach parenting from a very simple perspective, that these are small human beings. They're not my property. Um, they're not something that I control. They're not an automaton that I can just program to do what I want. These are small human beings. They're going to grow into large human beings if I do my job properly, um, and keep them fed and clothed and alive long enough to become large human beings. Um, And so I try to approach parenting from that perspective. I approach them with honesty in all things. Um, and that's not all things whenever possible. That's I approached all things with honesty with them. Everything is approached honestly. Um, there's no mention of Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or any of that. Um, you know, they know mom and dad buy the presents, and the presents come on Atheist Kids Get Presents for No Apparent Reason Day. That's just how it works because that's real life. Um, and I explain to them why they should or should not do things. I don't just tell them don't do that. And when they say, "Well, why?" then say, "Because I said so." That's not an apt response. That doesn't teach any lesson. That doesn't explain anything. So I explain to them in the most simple terms possible in every situation why they should or shouldn't do something. And so far, fingers crossed, it's worked out pretty well. They seem to grasp most concepts when explained very simply, and why they should or shouldn't do things, and act accordingly. And hopefully, as far as I can tell, that is includes when I'm not watching, and that's the important part. And that's another thing that I've tried to instill in them. It's the character of a man is not what he does when other people's watching. It's what he does when no one's watching. That's what defines your character. That's what defines who you are as a person. What you do when no one is looking. And I try to instill that in them at all times and explain to them why they should or shouldn't do things. Why it's ethical to do things, not morality, not something subjective. Why it's ethical. Do these things because they are ethical. Don't do these things because they are unethical to do.
Well, when nobody is looking, what video game are you playing?
Uh, Far Cry 5. And that's a guilty pleasure. It's Fantasyland and taking down fundamentalist Christian cult members is just there's something satisfying about that, down in my psyche, and it's unfortunate about me. It is something I definitely uh, should talk about with someone, but for the time being, it can be kind of cathartic. So.
And do you officially have a man bun? It's a question from
Uh,
the chat room.
I do at the moment. It's just been a long day, so I tied it all back. Generally, I tend to do some Viking style hairdos quite often. A lot of braids and some twists and sometimes dreadlocks. It depends.
Well, maybe save some of that for Nanocon. So, where can people find you online?
Facebook, of course. My personal page is public. That's Jason Rigsby. Um, uh, I should be fairly easy to find. It's a yellow background with a little stick man pointing at a sign that says, "Well, that's not good," and the sign says "bad." Um, and I also have my author page, Casper Rigsby author, and then uh, a page that I started several years ago called "God Doesn't Matter." Which is run by a wonderful team of admins over there, who just post hilarious material. And it's definitely worth a follow. It's full of memes and just funny commentary from these admins who are just wonderful, wonderful people who basically took over the page for me when I got started doing so much other stuff. Um, and I'm also on Twitter. I'm actually fairly active on Twitter. I find that Twitter is really troll central, and so I will be very irate and uncivil towards people on Twitter. So anyone who does follow me on Twitter, to be warned about that. But my handle on Twitter right now is spoiler alert: everyone dies, and it's at God Doesn't Matter.
Perfect. Well, sounds great. Thank you, Casper, for being on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me on.